On this episode of Race Talk with Lane and Eugene, Kat Kim, spiritual teacher, leadership coach, and founder of the School of Divine Confidence, speaks on the topic consumer spirituality and systemic racism. The date of this episode is January 27th, 2021.
Again, welcome to Race Talk with Lane and Eugene. And today, we have the honor of having with us the remarkable Kat Kim. Kat and I met a year ago at a conference, and it feels like we've been friends even before then. Kat is a spiritual teacher. Kat is a leadership coach and the founder of the School of Divine Confidence. The school is an online school that offers spiritual training and confidence coaching to rising women leaders and change makers across the world. You see, Kat comes with an interesting set of skills based on her background and some of the experiences that she has had. One of which is she's a former crack addict and a convicted drug offender who was facing 3 years in state prison. But she got past all of that, all the abuse and the depression, that came on, that she worked through as she got to that other side of that. So her come from is unique. It's powerful, and she has a passion for what she does. Her inspiring transformation and work with real people worldwide have landed Kat on the set. Get this, landed her on the set with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as a contributing coach on his motivational reality TV show called Wake Up Call. Now that aired nationally on TNT Network. Today, my dear friend Kat continues to impact thousands of people using her bold, yeah, she's bold, and unconventional presence to help them build unshakable confidence in knowing who they are and what they're here to do. My Race Talk family, I want to welcome our beloved Kat Kim.
Hello. How are you guys? So wonderful to see all these beautiful faces. I am very, very interactive. I feed off of energy. I wish we could be together face to face. I love speaking in front of groups, but clearly we can't. But I need your guys' energy. So if I say something that resonates, put a hell yes in the chat box for me. Give me a hello. Let me know. Let me see some highs in the chat box. I want to get you guys to be getting used to talking to me and asking questions. So let me see some hellos in the chat box. Let me see that you guys are with me. It is such a pleasure to be here. Hi, Virgie. Thank you. Hello, Carol. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Kara or Kara. Hi. Hiya. Okay, wonderful. Good. You guys are with me. So where do I even begin with all of this? I spoke at the 2020 CSL convention last year, right before the pandemic. I love you guys. Yes, hello. And Eugene, I don't know if you know this or not, but the topic that I'm going to share with you guys today is the topic that I presented to the CSL convention in front of over 600 CSL ministers, practitioners, and leaders from across the world.
Now, let me just stop you for a second, Kat, because everybody doesn't know what CSL is, okay?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We just want to clarify Centers for Spiritual Living, right?
Yeah, the Centers for Spiritual Living organization. That's right. Every year, all of the ministers and spiritual leaders gather together for a convention, and I was asked to speak in front of it. Can we have someone's on? I can hear somebody. Can we make sure that we're on mute? So what?
We may want to unmute Kat. Okay, good.
Yeah, there we go. I'm unmuted. What the organization didn't realize, and what I didn't realize at that time, was that I was being called to bring up a topic that was at that time very controversial and uncomfortable. And I'll be honest, Eugene, I was given 10 minutes to give the talk, but I went for 25. And I was like, I don't know. But it was like I was being led by God to share this topic and to speak on it. And when I got on stage, it all just came out. And I know there were some people that were not happy with it, including probably the main leader. But it's okay. You know, when I felt called that I had to be talking about this topic, consumer spirituality, I knew that it wasn't just me, it was just something that the collective was beginning to talk about and ask about, and the information was simply just moving through me. So this is what I wanted to share with you guys today about what consumer spirituality is and how we are unknowingly and inadvertently practicing it. So first, I want to give a little bit of a background. I've been coaching and mentoring for over 10 years, and I've worked with people across the board. I've worked with multimillionaires who own wineries and buildings and businesses, and I've worked with people who have no money, single mothers, bankrupt. And the interesting thing that I observed in all of my years of working with these varying people was that they all had the same problem. They all had the same issue. They came to me with the same exact challenge. And it was basically, it was two things. One, they didn't feel worthy enough. They didn't feel like they were lovable enough, respected enough. They weren't getting enough acknowledgement. They were afraid that they weren't good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, rich enough, all of those like feelings of unworthiness. And the other thing was lack of resources, lack of money, lack of time, lack of clients, or lack of just, whatever they were looking for. And I realized that the common theme between these two things was basically scarcity and lack. No matter where they were on the socioeconomic scale, no matter what they've accomplished, no matter how many amazing things they have and they've done, every single person was feeling like they weren't enough and they did not have enough. Have you guys ever experienced this? Do you guys ever experience this? Let me know in the chat box. Put yes. This is something that I know that I am challenged with again and again and again, like feeling like I'm not good enough, smart enough, like I don't have enough money, like where's my resources gonna come from? Like those feelings are just like, they're within me, and I saw them in my clients, no matter where they were on the socioeconomic scale. And so I really began to take a look at this, because not only was I seeing this within my community and my clients, but I began to see this out in the world. Everybody, almost everybody, is concerned with money and not having enough and not being enough. And so I really began to take a look at the culture that we're living in, and I realized that we are absolutely consumed by scarcity and lack. We live in a culture that is tormented with the feelings of not being good enough and not having enough. And I really began to question this. I was like, how is this possible? We live in one of, supposedly, we live in one of the most richest countries in the world with access to the greatest resources. Yet we are drowning in the feelings of not being good enough and not having enough, no matter what we've accomplished and no matter what we have. Does this resonate? Do you guys see this out there in the world? Let me know if this resonates with you. And what I began to see is that we live in this culture, and then I began to see that we were using spirituality as a way to remove ourselves from the suffering that we were having. And I realized that spirituality became all about, how can I get more? How can I get more money? How can I get a better house? How can I get more things? I'm not feeling good about myself, so how can I use a meditation practice or a law of attraction technique to feel good and be better and get more? Because right now, I just don't have enough. That's right, we're praying for more stuff. Thank you. And I was like, whoa, I began to see something, not just within the mainstream pop culture spirituality, but even within the organizations of spirituality, like the Centers for Spiritual Living. And I began to see that there was like this marriage. There was a marriage between consumerism and spirituality. And I realized that there was this thing going on where these two things had been married together, and that people were using spirituality as a way to consume more. And most of the mainstream spiritual teachings at that time, and still even today, were about how to manifest XYZ, how to get more XYZ. And there was no mention, absolutely no mention of how harmful making more and creating more and doing more can be, not just for our personal psyche, but for the global, for our global community, and what it does to our environment and our resources. So I began really taking a hard look at what the type of spirituality that I was practicing and I was preaching. I began to take a hard look at, who my teachers were, where I was getting information from, and I took a step back from it all. I had to pause because it was a mind fuck, excuse my language, but it really messed my mind up, because I realized that I was consuming and teaching and preaching something that actually wasn't good for the collective. And so I had to pause from all of my activities, my business activities. I kind of had this what do you call it? The dark night of the soul moment. Yeah. And I wrote an essay about this because I started to really take a look at this, and it's called Consumer Spirituality, the Mainstream Pop Culture Spirituality of Today. It's basically, like the new cultural addiction. And so I wrote about this essay, and let me just define what consumer spirituality is. Consumer spirituality is the mainstream pop culture spirituality of today that essentially trains us to be better consumers. It trains us, it teaches us how to be better consumers, and inadvertently perpetuates blind conformity to the often dominating and oppressive structures of consumer capitalism. And there are 4 parts to consumer spirituality that I wrote about. 1, it appropriates and commodifies ancient spiritual teachings. So we cherry pick the easy and the positive aspects of other spiritual traditions, we package them, and we make them palatable to the Western world, right? We take the easy parts of spiritual traditions and we use those parts only. Consumer spirituality 2, it promotes self-interest and personal development over all else. So spirituality is offered not as a way to alleviate collective suffering and create social change, but as a way to become more comfortable, efficient, and wealthy, right? Does this resonate with you guys? Have you guys seen this out in the world with spirituality? Consumer spirituality, 3, it encourages self-interest and personal development over all else. I already said that. Consumer spirituality 3, it teaches us to seek pleasant emotional experiences at all costs. So uncomfortable human emotions such as anger, grief, rage, they are cast as the opposite of spiritual enlightenment, and they are shunned and labeled as being low vibe, right? Have you guys seen that? And then lastly, consumer spirituality encourages overconsumption and materialism. So it emphasizes that the universe is infinite. The universe is infinite. You can manifest whatever you want, right? But when this spiritual principle, which is true, there's truth in that spiritual principle. However, when that spiritual principle is married to consumerism, it only ends up reinforcing the vicious cycles of overconsumption that perpetuate racism, inequality, corruption, and environmental degradation around the world, right? So I really began to see that consumer spirituality, the mainstream pop culture spirituality of today, is really designed to be a capitalist product for privileged Westerners. affluent Westerners. And when I say privileged affluent Westerners, I am talking about everybody in this room. Okay, in the Western world, we have a certain privilege over other countries that are underdeveloped. And what we don't realize in this Western culture is that through our overconsumptive habits, which include buying a new iPhone every time a new one comes out, which means buying all this technology and new things again and again and again. Who makes those things? While we are here in the Western culture trying to manifest more of that and seeking more of that, who is really suffering as a result of that? Those are the things we have to really take into consideration. And so to come across this topic and to come across this for myself was very, very difficult for me. It was something where I had to take a hard look at how I was contributing to this culture of consumerism and how I was inappropriately using spirituality to just manifest things for myself and myself only without any mention of social issues and challenges that are going around globally. And it really called on me to deepen my spiritual practice. So this is what consumer spirituality is. And I just wanted to open this up to you guys if you guys have any questions or comments about what consumer spirituality is. And I just want to read some of these comments here. John says, it is insufficient to say that the inequality of education is a major cause of feelings of inadequacy and inability to improve one's situation of so many. John, can you say more about that? Lane is
John, you're on mute. John, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I posted my my comment more in the form of a question because you know we tend to focus on you know, I mean, obviously racial inequality or you know, prejudice has a lot to do with education. You know, clearly there are inadequacies and inequities in our education system, but you know, but even beyond that, you know, the access to education is insanely skewed. You know, if you're even if you're not poor, you know, if you're getting by, you know, you don't think of yourselves as poor, you know, the idea of a formal education, you know, college is elite for anybody. I mean,
yeah.
You know, if you're not making $250,000 a year, putting two kids through college is, you know, virtually impossible without some sort of, you know, loans or scholarships or something. You know, and a person that's in that situation, they're looking at their path to get ahead, you know, like, well, if I get a bachelor's or a master's, I can make more money. Yeah, you can. But the path to getting there is so daunting, you know, you're going to feel inadequate about that if you're in an economic situation where you can't write a check for, you know, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year to go to school.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, that is a contributing factor, or I'm proposing that that's a contributing factor to much of what Kat was saying. You know, people just, you know, I'm stuck. How do I get, you know, what do I do, you know?
Yeah.
I feel inadequate and unable to improve my social and economic and even, you know, ability to, you know, purchase stupid stuff, you know, that everybody likes to purchase.
Yes, John, thank you so much. Can you mute yourself just for a second? Because I hear an echo. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comment, and I completely agree. And this is where we have to take a hard look at the overall system that we're all operating under. You know, this system of extractive capitalism, meaning, you know, taking as much as we can from everyone below us so that we can make as much as we can. That system is a system that has really overtaken everything in our culture. And it's what we operate from. And whether we realize it or not, this system of extractive capitalism and the principles behind it, which is pretty much get as much as I can for me, is what is running our country. It's what's running all of our systems in like, you know, education, like you're saying, John, politics, government. It is that philosophy of we have to get as much as we can for ourselves, that is really overtaking even spirituality. And that's where the term consumer spirituality came from, is that spirituality in itself, which is really about, you know, divine principles of oneness and, you know, there's everything that spirituality is, it's been co-opted and it's been married to consumerism, which comes from the system of extractive capitalism. And those two things have been married. But everything within the system of extractive capitalism is something that we really need to take a hard look at. Not just, and this is not about the left and the right. Everyone is operating under the system of extractive capitalism. And the question is, how are we going to, you know, remove ourselves from that? What are we willing to do to reclaim our power and not be a victim to the system that really thrives? This system thrives off of our feelings of lack and scarcity. Do you get that? Because when we are feeling lack and scarcity, we are constantly looking outside of us to feel fulfilled. We are constantly looking outside of us for more money, more praise, more, you know, better career, better, whatever that thing is, we're giving our power away. And we are waiting and we are wanting from something outside of us to change in order to feel good about ourselves. And the consumer culture will have us continuously think that we need to buy this or purchase that in order to be okay. And so it's really important that we really reclaim our power, which comes from the inside.
Can I ask you a question, please, Kat? So
Yeah.
This is Lane. So you asked a good question. What can we do to reclaim our power? And you were saying that that consumer spirituality and capitalism, as we know, does take away from people who have less, and you know, have that kind of reinforce that feeling of I'm not good enough, right? And so creates that no opportunity for people to move up, built on their backs, so to speak, right? So what can we do to reclaim our power? And once we do that, how will that impact positively all of the isms that you're saying actually are a result of, you know, or consumer spirituality and the practice of the spiritual wanting? I want more, and how can I pray for that? How can I, you know, what's going to make me feel better? The way a spiritual practice should make me feel better. So what can we do? And once we do that, how will that impact systemic racism or other isms?
Okay, so one of my, as I was going through this and I was discovering that I was practicing consumer spirituality, I really began to look at different teachers. I really began to take a hard look at who I was learning from. And I started to read everything I could get my hands on with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I realized, wow, if you read his books and you read what he's about, there's such a there's a vast difference between Martin Luther King and, let's say, Abraham Hicks and the Vortex. You know, it was Dr. Martin Luther King who was risking his life to bring equality to our country. And then there's, you know, the mainstream pop culture spirituality teachers that were talking about how can I get more XYZ. And Dr. Martin Luther King talks about being fulfilled in 3 dimensions of life. And I call it the 3 pillars of divine confidence. He said that every person, each person would not, you know, it would be very difficult for in order for someone to feel fulfilled in life, they need to be living in 3 different dimensions. Let me explain what those are. Dimension 1, he called it the length of life. I call this the pillar of self-actualization. This pillar, this dimension is all about your self-interest. It's about your needs. It's about who you are being called to be and what you are being called to do as a very, very unique individual compared to everybody else. So this is like getting really clear about what makes you happy, what makes you fulfilled in your own personal development, okay? So that's dimension 1 or pillar 1. Dr. Martin Luther King talks about the second dimension, and he calls it the breadth of life. I call it pillar 2, which is the pillar of social responsibility. This dimension or pillar is not about your self-interest, it's about you as part of the collective. So while pillar 1 was about what your needs are, now pillar 2 or dimension 2 is about what are the needs of the collective and how can you contribute to that, right? And then the third pillar or the third dimension, Dr. Martin Luther King called the height of life. And I call this the pillar of your relationship with spirit. Anything that we're being called to do, anything that we are meant to do in this world will go much better and easier with God or spirit or the universe, whatever name you have for it, with your higher power with you. And this pillar, this dimension is all about creating that intimate, special relationship with God or spirit. So intimate. Like, can you imagine, if you think about someone that you know very closely in your life, your partner, your kids, when you look at them in the morning and they make a face at you, you know instantly what they're thinking and feeling. That's how intimate you are with people in your life. Do we have that type of intimacy? Do we have that type of knowingness with spirit? And so Dr. Martin Luther King talked about having these 3 areas as the foundation of who you are as a spiritual seeker, right? And so really, really being fulfilled in these 3 areas. So that, I hope, addresses the how, Reverend Lane. And then I believe that what happens when you are really grounded in these 3 dimensions or these 3 pillars is that you become fully aware that your source for all things, everything you are seeking and wanting already lives within you. And it really stems from that relationship with spirit. That spirit is your source for love. Spirit is your source for abundance. Spirit is your source for connection, and all of that. And when you begin to go within yourself and you really begin to feel true fulfillment within yourself, it really does heal that feeling of lack and scarcity. And when you are feeling so fulfilled within, you begin moving away from this, what about me because I need more, towards how can I give? How can I support? I am so fulfilled in this moment. I have so much. I have everything I need in this moment. So much so that I'm overfilling. How can I give? How can I give of my time and my resources and my money and my energy? So that's the big shift that I feel like we're all being called to step into a little bit more and more. So Tyrone, I wanted to address, if you don't mind, if you want to hop on. Tyrone says that although many of your points are very true, I think you need to go deeper in understanding the ancient meaning of New Thought as opposed to so-called prosperity gospel. Thank you, Tyrone. I absolutely, this is why I came up with the essay of consumer spirituality in the first place. And this is kind of like what I realized, Tyrone, is that I was entrenched in, prosperity gospel. It's what I thought what spirituality was about. And that's why it was difficult for me to realize that and see myself that way. And just like you're saying here, when you actually move past that, when you move past the prosperity gospel, when you move past consumer spirituality, you will see that there are deeper, more richer, teachings within New Thought and within all of spiritual traditions. So that's exactly what I'm saying, Tyrone. Thank you.
Can I speak to that just for a
Yeah.
moment?
Yeah.
So, like I said, you're making a lot of really good points, and I can see why you pissed the people off at CSL. You just kind of went to the heart of it, and you're thought provoking, and that's valuable to me, But I think there's a difference between prosperity gospel, which to me has been defined as white, conservative, Christian doctrine, which says this is here and everybody else is in the other camp, right? So that's to me, that's different from doing the deep dive into metaphysics, go back and reading Emmett Fox and other people who are clearly saying that, well, first of all, capitalism is not necessarily always a bad thing. Extractive capitalism, I can see that, definitely. But I think the deeper thing is that who you are goes far deeper, to your point, than it is the money that you're spending. And to disconnect those two doesn't mean that you're not willing to still give. It doesn't mean that you don't want abundance in your life. It can be quite the opposite. I'll give you a very, very good example. African Americans will spend a hell of a lot of money. Consumerism. I mean, we're talking over $1 million+ every $1 billion every year. Not $1 billion. It was 900 million. That's over $1 billion, right? Why is that going on? People want to buy the sneakers. They want to buy the latest thing. They want to buy it's cool. Why they want to do that? Spend $100,000 on the car because it makes them feel good.
Yeah.
Themselves, right? So I get you there, but going deeper than that and understanding that within it, there is no limitation. Within it, you can have anything that you necessarily want. Doesn't mean that you got to be selfish about it. Doesn't mean that I'm going to do this and I'm going to hoard it from others. What it means is that you open yourself to abundance with forgiveness. You open yourself to abundance with a variety of things. So although I think what you're saying, there's a lot of truth to it, and I can tell because you're pushing buttons, so that's how I can tell there's a lot of truth to it.
Yeah.
But I'm not, it almost feels like you're glossing over or you're making irrelevant much of the stuff that you were deeply entrenched in. And so I take issue to that. And although I respect where you're coming from, but I don't think you're going really into the deepest metaphysics, really deal with everything that you just said. Well, everything you want exists within you first.
Yeah.
Now, what happens after then? Do you radiate it out? Do you attract more? Yes. Anything you think about consistently, you attract, good or bad.
Yeah.
So that's my comment.
So let me jump in there, and both Tyrone, your point is well taken. And to dive deeper into we don't have that time, nor because that would just take us for another hour and a half. On top of the hour. And that I want to give more people opportunity to speak up, right? For example, Amber has had her hand up for a while, and I'm going to ask Amber if you can take yourself off of mute and go ahead and talk to us.
Hi, everyone. This is my first meeting.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think what I'm hearing, and Ms. Kim, you can correct me as I go through this thought process, is that capitalism is in a way poisoning Christianity or spirituality in everyone. And to me, that sounds that capitalism and spirituality are not compatible. Is that where you're going with this, or?
No, not necessarily. And Tyrone brings up a good point that there's a light and there's a shadow to everything. And what I'm calling out is the shadow side to capitalism, which is extractive capitalism, which is tied to, which is driven by our feelings of lack and scarcity. And it makes us want to extract as much as we can for me. Okay. And so that's what we, I am encouraging people to look at that system that we're all operating under, and how that system has really co-opted everything, including education and government, medicine, and even spirituality. So it's not that they can't work interdependently with each other, but when one has taken over completely, that's where it will start causing challenges. Does that help, Amber? Am I answering your question?
Yes, and I guess it's because my understanding of capitalism is like the base principle is supply and demand, and it can only go so far. And so what I personally, what I see capitalism today is like a bastardized version of what it was intended to be, and so it's now creating the demand. So it's creating exclusivity. So you have to have a big house, you have to have this car, you have to have a college degree. It's creating this so it can drive people to want these things and to feel this way, to feel inadequate, to continue to feed itself. Because our economy is no longer tied to a finite thing. You know, we used to have it tied, our dollars tied to gold. We no longer have it like that. So now our economy is pretty much based on how much consumer spending is going on, how much, how well our companies are doing. And for that to keep on happening, they have to have this industrial complex of always creating a fake demand, which is what I hear you're kind of like touching on, which is making people feel like they need to do these things to be a successful or whole person. And I think that it's done on purpose. So that's why I'm trying to find the balance. Where would the balance come from? I guess that's where I'm saying was like, what's the good side, or how can spirituality and capitalism work together if capitalism needs to be like this for it to work?
Yeah, so you nailed it on the head. Thank you, Amber. That's precisely where I'm getting with this, is that the system of extractive capitalism has created the desire. It's part of the way that system functions. And so much of our feelings of lack and scarcity come from the manufactured fear of not having something. It's in advertising and marketing. So thanks for nailing it on the head, Amber. And to find that balance, it goes back to those, for me, what I have discovered and found, and this is really what I'm sharing is my journey of undoing and deconditioning and decolonizing. And this is what I've come up with, and this is what I've shared, and this is what I'm sharing. What I have found that is helpful for me is those 3 dimensions described by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is really looking at you as a unique person. What are your needs? Okay. And then you as part of the collective, what is the needs of the collective? And then, your relationship to spirit or God.
Can I also say, I know Joe's got his hand up, and I appreciate that. One of the things that comes to me when you're talking is that there is a possibility for anti-racist consumerism, right? So, and when Amber was talking about capitalism, there is a slight difference between capitalism and consumerism. So unbridled consumerism really is, like she was saying, it's a byproduct of a bastardized capitalism, right? And that when we're talking about anti-racist activities and being able to actually use your money and invest in the people where that you are built on, your economy on top of, where you actually stole some of that spirituality and then co-opted that, as you said, into how can I get more for myself, rather than how can I actually learn about those people that from where that spiritual practice came from, right? And also to make sure that in that anti-racist consumerism, we are not just using our money and giving people what we think from the West they need, right? To actually go in and have a conversation and say, what do you need in this community? And let us support you from there. And how can that benefit everybody? So I just wanted to say that because I just like the term anti-racist consumerism. So I'm gonna use that from now on. So thank you, and feel free.
I like that. I think someone had a.
Yeah, Joe.
I'll let you guys do that because I can't follow. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, Kat. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, I'll be brief. Here's my question. Our congregation has a number of individuals who have raised their voices regarding the impact of COVID-19 is
Mhm.
having on them, and an
Mhm.
increased need for ministry to restore hope in them for the future.
Mm.
Right now, they are down, they're anxious, and they're struggling, and they're craving inspiration from their congregation to restore their hope and raise their spirits.
Mm.
How do you avoid the temptation to fall back and get stuck in the first dimension of individuality in an environment like this? Do you have any advice on how we can help people pull themselves out of being stuck in that individual zone because they're threatened or they feel they're threatened?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question, and this is part of one of the things I realize. What part of what consumer spirituality is bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is such a part of that consumer spirituality. Ignoring the pain and suffering of where people at, and just wanting them to fix themselves and telling them, well, just pray about it, just meditate about it, just think about this. What I would do, because I think what we're being called into is to go through the pain and suffering together. That's what builds community. And so I would say to meet them where they're at, listen to them. It's not about fixing. That's the thing. It's not about, there's nothing wrong with where anyone is at. But if we're leaders and we want to fully support, I think we need to be willing to meet them where they're at and to be there and to hold that container for them and to listen without any motive to change what's going on. Because to want to change somebody and change where they're at is to really, it's coming from a place that you're not in the right place and you need to be here. So it's a tough situation for everybody. We've clearly never been in a situation like this, so I don't have the direct answer, but I just know that when the thing that I always fall back on 100% all the time, when I hear someone suffering or going through something, is to simply hold that container and to be there with them, and not to force them or change them, but to simply listen and acknowledge where they are at. People need that space to be able to share what's going on without zero judgment, not just individually, but collectively. And this is so much what's happening. What I see within the Black community and people who are not listening, it's like, let's just stop and listen. Let's listen. We're not trying to change you. We're not trying to fix. And to even think that we have the solution to fix something is a place of righteousness, but let's listen. Let's feel the pain together. Let's hold each other and go into the darkness together and see what shows up in that darkness. So much about consumer spirituality and mainstream pop culture spirituality is all about the light. Go towards the light, think positive. But what I'm suggesting, and what I've heard so many, like Dr. Martin Luther King and Matthew Fox say, is that the divine lives in the darkness. The divine lives in the darkness. So let's hold each other and let's go into that darkness together and see what shows up for us there.
May I make a comment on what Lane was saying about racist, consumerism or, corporate marketing?
Mm-hmm.
I think, essentially all corporate marketing and consumerism is inherently racist just by its nature, because from a corporate marketing standpoint, as soon as I find that a certain group of people really likes my sneakers and they buy them more than maybe another group, could apply to anything, could apply to ballpoint pens, doesn't matter. The corporate marketing guys are gonna latch on to that and attempt to create a culture in that community or that segment of society that identifies them with this product. I gotta have Air Jordans. Everybody else in my community has them. And they must be cool because everybody has them. And it doesn't matter what race they're targeting this stuff to. You see it in let's say marketing to people not of, not people of, white people. I was trying to think of a way to people not of color. It didn't work. Sorry. But it's across the board. It's inherently racist, no matter who you're marketing to or who you think is going to buy your stuff. You see it to suburban housewives with strollers or baby toys. It doesn't matter. But my point is on consumer spiritualism, maybe it's more of an idea of, creating an idea that my happiness and my self-worth isn't tied to whether I can have Air Jordans or the latest $2,000 Krakow stroller,
Right.
and more tied to seeking peace and acknowledgement of your inherent self, of all of our inherent self-worth. And I may not make as much as Jeff Bezos, or may not even make as much as the lawyer living down the block, but I'm gonna choose to find a way to be happy and believe in myself, and that's a path forward. I mean, Rousseau and Spinoza were kind of preaching that mantra in the 17th century.
Exactly, John. Exactly. Dean, you are next. I see your hand there. So Dean, you are next. You want to take yourself off of mute. And John and everyone else. So that's what this is really about, is identifying what's going on in terms of consumerism and capitalism, and then identifying for me is like, do I want to play in that playground or that sandbox, because I like to be in a playground, or what can I do? Who am I to be in this, so that I may, because I'm called to teach, I'm called to touch. And so how can I, who am I to be in this, so that will inform me what's mine to do, right? So I don't have to get sucked in. And it's very important for me, the spiritual practice for me is being aware of not being sucked into the pull of the Jordans or the Graco or the Mercedes, although I like the Mercedes 550 series, the S series. It's a great looking car. Anyway, but it is really about tapping into our spirituality for our own individualized selves, so that we may then raise the vibration. Mrs. Usher.
Okay, thank you. Three rapid points. The first thing is Christianity is quite clear about this. Jesus knew what he was doing when he overturned the tables of the money changers in the market. So that was a clear statement of the need of the collective as opposed to the capitalist. The second thing, Kat, thank you so much for being on the call. We have been here before many times. All revolutions are really the money changers as opposed to the people. That's what the French Revolution was about. That's what the Russian Revolution was about. But unfortunately, in both cases, the revolutions were taken over by dictatorships. We as human beings tend to be attracted by the powerful person with the biggest voice, even though they may have the lowest amount of morality. The third point I wanted to say, as an African American who was raised in a very comfortable, highly educated family, I can tell you that Black consumerism is a very interesting thing. Many Blacks will spend more money than they have, buy things they don't need, because the majority society has made us feel so ugly, so unworthy, so unlovable, that we do this almost as a Band-Aid over the pain that we are feeling.
Yes.
On the other side, we buy the Mercedes, and yes, my daddy owns several of them. They buy, and a Jaguar. It's also done to show whites, see, we really are more important than you think we are. So when you have heaped all this scorn on a group of people, they use sneakers or Mercedes to try to soften the pain.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much, Adine. One of the things one of my main points in all of this, as well as we look at extractive capitalism, is to look at where does this come from? And how did we get here? The truth of the matter is that capitalism is tied to racism. This country was built on the backs of African-American slaves and Native American lives. Why? Because in the 1700s, there was this technology that just for the cotton loom that was created in Britain, okay? And it just skyrocketed the need for cotton because of this technology. Well, cotton was actually available across the globe. But where could they get cotton the cheapest? In America. Why? Because colonizers stole the land from natives and they used African slaves to produce that cotton. So that cotton was able to be produced for very, very cheap in America. And so America is the country that provided cotton to the entire world. Now, I hear this, every time I bring this topic up, I get a lot of people who are not happy when I bring this, and a lot of ministers too, who don't like to hear me talking about capitalism and racism and all of these things. I got 3 emails right now, and one of them is calling me Luciferian, you know? But the thing is that slavery has existed all throughout the world. I hear this all the time. Yes, it has existed all throughout the world, but it has never existed against one race of people. Never against one race of people, primarily for the color of their skin and where they came from. And that happened with the slavery in the 1600s and 1700s in America. And who benefited from that? The entire world benefited from that. Everybody benefited from that. And nobody, no country stopped this from happening.
Come on
and
now.
So, what's that?
Come on now.
Yeah. So this country, the superpower that we are, okay, it started from that moment. All of innovation, all of entrepreneurship was built on the backs of African-American slaves and lives of Native American and the lives of Native Americans. That's what we have to really come to terms with. And who benefits from that? Everybody. And here's where it gets, let me take this to another level. Slavery is still happening around the world, okay? But who's benefiting from it? We are. We are. These cell phones, my washing machine, my home, my car, those BMWs, those Mercedes. How is it that companies are able to amass so much wealth? How? Ain't nothing changed. It's because there are people who are working for nothing and making this happen and making it possible. That is what extractive capitalism is.
Yeah. Kat, thank you so very much. So very much. Man, I tell you, you know, Lane and I have to talk about maybe possibly extending race talk for an hour to an hour and a half, because the people that we have on, and then of course you guys who come on and with your beautiful questions and your comments, and like as Tyrone, my brother Tyrone Cozy said, wanting to go deeper, so we may start talking about expanding the time, but for right now, we have 4 minutes, and I am that person who likes to stay right on time. So with 4 minutes left, Kat, can you give us in 2 minutes some closing remarks, and then I'm going to ask Lane to close this out.
Yeah. So what I've really come to understand and discover about our spiritual journey, first of all, Tyrone, I actually 100% agree with you. And that's the point that I'm getting at, is that we are being called to deepen everything about our spiritual journey. If we want to call ourselves spiritual leaders, if we want to call ourselves spiritual seekers, this is going to require that we shed those layers and we be willing to feel the pain and suffering of our brothers and sisters across the world, both in the present moment and in the past. And it's not fun. It's not fun. It's painful. It'll piss you off. If you haven't gotten pissed off once on your spiritual journey, then I would say that you're not doing it right yet. That's what I'm saying. It's like a spiritual path is to feel the pain and suffering of our brothers and sisters and to walk that journey together. And what that is going to require is self-sacrifice. That is going to require us to get off of our privileged asses and to be willing to get uncomfortable and to feel like confused and not know exactly what this conversation isn't comfortable for me. I know I'm making mistakes as I'm doing it, but this is my effort in trying to do it. This is my effort in trying to make and to feel the pain and suffering and to share my personal journey. And I'm telling you, I get emails all the time. This is wrong and you're doing it wrong, but hey, I'm here and I'm doing it. This is my part. And this is what I'm asking for everybody is to be willing to make those mistakes and to show up for our brothers and sisters, anybody across the world, present, in the future, in the past, that are in a state of pain and suffering.
Kat Kim, thank you so very much. I'm making a commitment to you to stay in touch, all right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Whew, my sister Lane.
Thank you, Kat Kim, for that very thought-provoking conversation. I know you had your eye on the chat, and people are really appreciating what you're saying. And I know that there will be people now. We're going to go from this, and the next time we buy anything, we'll think a little bit differently. So this is a lovely conversation. Thank you so much. You can find out more about Kat Kim at katkim.com. We are thrilled that you are still here with us. Thank you for our first timers. We have great conversations like this every single week, and we hope that you will come back every week and lend your voice to the conversation, because on Race Talk with Lane and Eugene, your voice matters. And next week we will be joined or rejoined by Dr. Felicia Williams-Cozy, right? All right, everybody, have a wonderful week. Take care.